Hi everyone, I want to give you an early look of the Season 22 meta. This is still quite early, this is all subject to change, and it's also not a super advanced analysis. This is mostly just from my testing. I've done, I don't know, about 40 hours of BTR testing so far, with like 20 hours of theory crafting of D3 planners before that and so on, and like of course all the experience that I have from the game. But yeah, it's still, not really set in stone. So I try to give some numbers. I try to give like a little bit of an overview of what are the best builds, how they are in relation to each other, so you give a better understanding. But it's not, 100% accurate. We're gonna do it at a later point when we have the final patch notes. We're gonna work on some actual like tier list and put everything in the right order. But this is just kind of give you the first look here. So let's get started. I have all the classes with the top builds sorted and also those that got changed in some way. Not all of them necessarily are the top tier. So for example, Uliana is nothing great, or the Witch Doctor chicken is nothing great, and so on. But it's just to give you a rough understanding, and also have the foreman meta, you have the leveling, you have the T16, you have the GR speeds. So let's hop in here with the Crusader. So the best build in the game was the Gold DH. It's now the Thorns Crusader, so the Arcan Invoker combo with the Bombardment. That is most likely going to get nerfed because it's just way over whatever we've had so far. And there's like a Paragon 3k 150 clear on PTR already. So we're probably going to expect something like a Paragon 2.5k clear 150 easily next season, when people are actually trying a bit harder. So yeah, this is by far the best build right now. It's also just dictating the foreman meta. There's actually double Thorns Crusader foreman clears on the leaderboards, basically everywhere. And funny enough, they use the CDH here. There's a lot of CDHs, no monk. So that's pretty cool to see a bit of variety, to see like a bit of a different setup that's possible, because the Squirts doesn't really fit in so well in this setup here. So then there's Valor, which is by far the best Swift Guardian killer with the new Norvald set. This is the strongest version of that build ever, and it's gonna blast like GR150 Rift Guardians in like 1 to 1.5 minutes, no pylon, when you have like Paragon 2.5k or 2k or so. So that was really strong. Hammers got buffed. I haven't really gotten around to playing it much, but it's probably going to be quite terrible. I assume somewhere in like the 130 range or 135 maybe. But yeah, Thorns 150 easy, Valor probably close to maybe 145, Hammer's pretty bad. Necro, Bone Spear is another really strong build, so I've already shown this at a few occasions. I've cleared a 125 in 9 minutes with basically no Paragon and level 25 gems, no augments. So it's very strong. It's also going to go to very close to 150. I believe the high-end clears will be 150, but on like a little bit lower-end Paragons, it's not going to reach quite that far. There's still Scythe. Scythe also has a possibility to still be played in Foreman. It didn't really get much of a loss because, well, they fixed the double dipping, but you get the 4th cube slot. So it's still a very viable Foreman, like 150 choice, and also for solo pushing. Same with Corpse Explosion. The fixed Dragoons actually made Corpse Explosion better in comparison, and it also gets a 4th cube slot. It should be quite strong now. So all of these builds will be at least 140 and probably quite close to each other. So probably all of them 145 even. So these are the top 2 classes here right now. Then Monk, we have Tempest Rush. This is back with a bang. We have the Shenlongs getting buffed to 350%. And when you play the Monk, the Tempest Rush, then you get the big bonus here. This is like around 8 tiers or so really huge from the 4th cube slot, and this will make the build, in my opinion, much more fun to play. I've already done this in Season 20. I cleared a 140 with this back then, and now it's 4 or 5 tiers stronger than that. So it's gonna go to like 144, 145 with like rather mediocre Paragon here, and we're probably gonna go close to 150 as well with the Monk here. Then DH I put on the same level with God. I forgot to talk about Uliana. So Uliana, it got buffed by around 5 tiers. It got double the damage from the Gundam gear, but it's not anywhere close to any of the other monk builds like the Tempest Rush. So I assume that the really high-end clears are going to be like 135 or so on Uliana. So it's like around 12, 15 tiers behind the Tempest Rush, I'd say. Okay, Demon Hunter, God is not nerfed, so it was the best build in the game, and there's one build now, or maybe 2, with Necromancer included with this 4th cube slot that can beat it. But here I believe like at least 144, 145 or so quite easily. We're also going to see 150, God solo clears, I believe, in the season. Shadows is unchanged, so this is probably the second build after God. Yeah, probably like somewhere in the 130s, 135 range. Multishot also is like 130-ish. So yeah, something like that, 135 maybe, if you go really hard with Hyperagon. So yeah, that's that. And there's some other builds like N6 and 4 and so on, but they're not really cutting it these days. Witch Doctor meta is completely unchanged, so we have Mundunugu as before, which is very strong actually, but it doesn't really get close to the other top builds. It's still viable in 4-man, I believe, that Witch Doctor can still be played quite reliably for 150 clears in 4-man if you like to. But there's that. Then there's Gargs that I've tried a bit. There's probably some other builds, but they are quite far behind compared to Mundunugu. So there's also Sunimasa, which has been played before Mundunugu came around. So that could be pretty decent. And I believe Garx and maybe something like Firebats, you can all like push into like the 130s, 135 maybe, but definitely quite a bit far behind. And there's Chicken, which got a big buff in this patch, and it's still terrible. So forget about this and just play Mundunugu, and you're gonna be better off. Then there's Wizard. It's quite hard to say. This is like the biggest question mark, I guess. So I haven't really played it that much yet, but looking at the clears on leaderboards and looking from what I've seen, looking at my non-seasonal testing, it all doesn't really seem to be, all near the other builds. So I believe that the clear is going to be significantly lower because it's also much more RNG. It's much harder to play, much harder to get the right rifts to actually pull something like Twister off, for example. All these builds got buffed quite a lot, and they're all not bad, but they are not really cutting it. So you have to include a Death Wish in all of these. This might change because Death Wish has kind of this unintended interaction that you can stutter step around and then have the effect for when you're not even channeling anymore for a split second. And then you can use this to buff all the other skills. So this is pretty bad, and this might get changed, and then we might see some big balance boost or like some big damage boost to these builds. Frozen Orb seems to be the best one here, and then the Hydra, and then the Twister, I believe. Twister has a lot of damage potential, but I believe that people are not really going to try so hard to actually get the right rift for that. You need like a very specific rift, you need a very specific monsters, you need a very specific Rift Guardian in a very specific corner, just because the Twisters go all over the place. But theoretically it is very strong and it could be used, but yeah, it's also too RNG. This is probably like one of the most RNG builds in the game right now. Barb, a little bit on the lower side here, so I put it on the same level as the Wizard. So Barb is kind of like falling behind now. Whirlwind, I've also pushed the 140 of this in season 20 when you had 3 rings. Now we're gonna have 2 rings, and then you can wear the Focus and Restraint for Whirlwind, so that's pretty nice. It's gonna be slightly weaker than in season 20, I believe, and yeah, it's still quite good though. It's quite fun, the Whirlwind, so can always go with that. It's very nice for farming. Same with Frenzy. Frenzy is gonna be a bit behind the Whirlwind, so usually like I don't know, 3 to 5 tiers. So also somewhere in the 130 plus range. And there's Leapquake that got buffed a lot, but I also believe it's around 8 tiers or so behind the Whirlwind. So something like a 130 could be done with Leapquake, I believe. I've cleared like a 115 without much trouble, with like no paragons and low gems and so on. So this was fine. Leapquake works if you want to play it, but I also believe this could see another big boost here. Then we have the 4-man speeds. So the speed meta will be the rats. They are gonna be very strong, especially once the Dragul is fixed. There's like some bug with it right now in the PTR. So they replaced one bug for another bug. But essentially, we have around 120 or 125 speed rats with like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes maybe. It's going to be very strong. It's going to be the craziest XP meta that we have seen so far. 10 trillion plus XP per hour probably towards the higher end. Even 12 trillion are theoretically possible once you approach like GR130 on like really high end. So this is there. There's Bone Spear, which also works pretty well. So there's like a triple support Bone Spear setup that I've tried with Rob and Northfar, and that is pretty cool to play. So you have like one really high DPS physical Bone Spear Necro that blasts everything. It's not really too far behind, so definitely a good alternative. It's something that I actually consider over the rats, but we'll see. I might play both, who knows. And then there's the God Speeds, just giving an estimate here. So they didn't really change. They got a very minor benefit from the cube, so it's nothing really great. But this is probably like the next best option after the 2 Necro setups here. Then for the 4-man push, So I mentioned this a bit already. We have the Thorns, the Crusader. Then with the CDH here, we also have Thorns and Valor with the regular zMonk, zBarb. So all the other setups have those supports that is unchanged from the other season. So this is possible as well. Hard to say what is better right now. The best clear so far are the Thorns, but I believe that we're probably going to go with a Valor Crusader here, because you'll probably find out better ways to optimize the Thorns DPS, and then the Valor might basically pull ahead as the Rift Guardian killer here. And also the Thorns Crusader might get tuned down a bit, so that it might not really be fast enough to actually kill the bosses. So I believe it's going to be Valor Crusader. There's also the other option of the Hydra Wizard. So that has shown some promise on the PTR so far, and now we get the Death Wish for that as well. So we could actually see like something like 1.5 to 2 minutes boss fights with Hydra Wizards on GR150. So this is quite interesting. It's a bit behind the Valor, but not by too far, and definitely an option, and it might bring some other benefits to the party. Then the next setup here, we have Bone Spear, definitely viable for 150. There's Witch Doctor, as I mentioned, and then theoretically can also play God for 150 DPS. I wouldn't really recommend it because it's quite laggy too. When you have high density and the hanging arrows just pierce everything and you proc arrow damage, and it's quite laggy. But you can do it, especially when you have a very strong God TH, but you should probably go with one of the other setups here. Yeah, for leveling, we have the Cursed Chests as the best strategy, so we can do something like 45 minutes out of records, I believe, for 1 to 70 at the season start. Very good. And theoretically, there are also the clones. So we're still trying to figure out how the shadow clones work exactly, but there are some like campaign spots or adventure mode spots where you have easy access to shrines, and theoretically you can go on T6 and click the shrine and have this clone one-shot everything for you. So I believe that this might be something to look at. Apparently you need to have at least one legendary item equipped to give them some kind of damage. So, and then it scales with the amount of legendary items that you have. So this is definitely something to watch out for, but we're going to look into this more, I believe. And then for the 16 and bounties, so most of the speed meta is pretty much unchanged. So we have the Wave of Light Monk, God TH, Multishot TH, very, very fast builds, very strong builds. So these are like the top dogs here in the Torment levels. Mundunugu, Tempest Rush. Red should be pretty nice because Messerschmitt and maybe even Ingeon, but probably Messerschmitt alone is fine. Auto Lancer should be quite nice, and the Fist of the Heavens and Whirlwind. So I just like kind of rank them here from top to bottom. So this is like the top dog, and then, you know, second, third, and so on. So this is just to give you like a little bit of an overview. And the same here with the GR100 speeds. So if you want to do like, you know, 2 or rather 3 minute runs, I guess, on like lower ends on this tier, then probably these builds are the best. So I believe Bone Spear would be the best. Then we have Tempest Rush, probably Rat, and then we have Whirlwind, Frenzy, God. They're like probably quite close here. Multishot, Impale. So all of these sort of work for this. Bone Spear might be like another 1 or 2 tiers better, or maybe like, you know, slightly faster. The same with Tempest Rush. But overall, these are kind of like in the same range of like a few tiers. And then there's like a lot of other builds that are like, you know, at GR95 and then GR90 or so. So most builds can actually do like something like GR90 if it's like a proper build that can also push like, you know, quite high. So there's definitely more options than this. Just wanted to show the top ones here. Yeah, so this is about it for what I have to share for now. I hope this gives you a little bit of an idea. Obviously, I will make some guides for this and probably cover most of the meta builds myself. And once we approach the season start, once we have the final patch notes, we're gonna work on a tier list. We're gonna, you know, bring everything more in line and find out what the exact meta is. So stay tuned for that. Right now, this will hopefully help you out to maybe make some decisions, get you hyped, and I hope you like this video here. So see you guys next time.